What is shaking, y'all? It is your boy, Mark Cordone. 3 people already in here even before we go live. It's good to see you. I am with a very special guest today, a very special person, someone who means a lot to me, someone who's turning 30 this year, and someone who I've known. God, I can't believe it. I've known you since you were 18. It's been 12 years, Jasmine. Jasmine is a public servant in Atlanta, Georgia. A community organizer. That's sort of where my roots are, is grassroots community organizing. We were fighting the good fight for a long time as Happy Soldier, sister. And it is good to see you over in Atlanta doing your thing. Jasmine is going to be talking about some amazing things today, about leadership, about finding your voice and singing.
Sang. You did. You got to sing.
Okay. So if y'all haven't met me, my name is Mark Cordone, and what I do is I am a hi Lauren Lemunion. We got a hello from Lauren Lemunion, Spitfire coach. Say hi to Jasmine, everybody. Jasmine, say hi to Lauren Lemunion in DC. What I do is 2 simple things. As a coach, can you get to feeling great every single day and living in complete and total fulfillment? So Jasmine, are you feeling great and living in complete and total fulfillment right now?
Feeling great and feeling very fulfilled.
Yeah!
Oh yeah.
I've never made that noise before, but like it's just so good to see you again. It's so good to see you again. So for all of you out there who are feeling great and you're living in your passion right now, I don't know if you've seen the show before, Jasmine, but give us some. Oh, you've seen the show. Give us some hearts. Give us some hearts. How do you make it? How do you make the heart beat over there in Atlanta?
It's some bankhead bouncing.
Oh, okay, so let's do a little bankhead bounce to make that a heart beat. However you make your heart beat, let's see you give us some hearts if you're feeling great and you're living to your fullest potential and passion. The Spitfire coach just said hi to Jasmine Bowles. It's good to see these introductions having you. We're seeing the hearts starting to roll in. Keep those hearts coming. Now, this is the thing, too, about life. Just because you might find that passion, just because you might be feeling good one day, does not mean that it's going to continue to the next day. That's why we practice things like gratitude, right? That's why we stay present. So if you're having one of these days where it's like, yo, Cordone, like I am not feeling great. I had some bad shellfish. My tummy hurts. I didn't get sleep last night. Or like you're like, I'm re-examining what I used to think were my passions and I'm going in a new direction and I'm not quite sure where I'm going. It's all right to be in that kind of confusion. Give me a thumbs up. Give us a thumbs up if you're feeling that. And you know what? We can do a thumbs up with a bankhead bounce. Do I have to make the face, Jasmine?
You don't have to. Optional, but it helps. There it is.
I feel like my face is going to do that. I don't know.
It's automatic.
Yeah. That's the most important thing. If you're having an up, if you're having a down, if you're feeling all around and you're not quite sure, but you're still optimistic about the future. Give me a big old wow face. You just give me spirit fingers. That's a smile. Smile and spirit. I want to see a wow face on you, Jasmine. That's what I'm talking about. Jasmine Bowles, public servant, just gave us a big old wow face. And if y'all are feeling it, give us a wow face if you're feeling optimistic. Now, with all of that said and done, I also wanted to bring this up because we're going to probably be talking about education today. These things are power right here. Books are power. So for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, this is a book out by Bruce D. Snyder. He founded iPEC Coaching. It just came out last month. Uncovering the Life of Your Dreams. How does that sound to you, Jasmine? Uncovering the Life of Your Dreams. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And when you actually read this, it's a story form and it answers the question. It doesn't answer it for you, but this person in the story answers his own question about creating and even more so uncovering the life of his dreams. So for those of you who joined the Beyond Resilient crew, you can pick this up for free. So go in. The link is somewhere on the Facebook notes for the show. Join the crew. Say that you want the book. You don't necessarily need to go to Barnes & Noble and pay $25 for this, for the Beyond Resilient crew folks. Now, also, if you want to donate like a couple, a buck, 30 cents, whatever, I will ship this book out to folks who don't necessarily the $25 book as a priority right now. They've got other things that they need to worry about. And Jasmine, I think those are things that we've been working towards for a long, long time, sister, right?
That's
Making
right.
sure these books get in the right hands, not just folks who have the privilege of always seeing us do these videos like this, right?
Oh,
There's
yeah.
folks who are in the middle of the hustle right now.
That's right.
So Jasmine, with all of that said, I want to talk about leadership with you. I want to talk about finding your voice and singing. I want to hear about your what you're doing with your public office, and also I want to talk about Proof Incorporated, which is started. Plan, resources, opportunities for organized freedom.
That's
amazing. Right. So we got a lot of things to talk about today, but given that, I just wanted to start out and say, first off, Jorge in Puerto Rico, peace and love. Mark, why do you never give my guests any love? Give Jasmine love and invite her to Puerto Rico, for God's sake. But yes, I'm going to Puerto Rico, Jorge. It is great to see you every single day. I've got hearts for you. But with all of that said, Jasmine, what's your story, sister?
Yeah, I really love that you open your show with this question, because that is actually the anchor of a lot of my work, and isn't about narratives and storytelling. So, empowering question. And I am from right here in Atlanta, Georgia. My family, I'm a first generation ATLian, as I like to call it. My mom is from New Orleans and my dad is from Memphis, and we've got family all over the place. So I've grown up here in Clayton County Public Schools on the south side of Atlanta and graduated from Lovejoy High School. I had a really, really awesome childhood. I mean, both of my parents and very involved. They made sure we had my brother and I had a lot of access, right, to everything from swim lessons and acting and just so much. And so I feel like I had a really well-rounded experience. Then I went to college at Emory, where we met, and Emory was really transformative. So I wouldn't know how to properly summarize it outside of saying that, like, just at Emory.
And I have to interrupt you. I never interrupt stories.
Noel!
From Emory wants to say hi. Noel, go and tell the roller coaster / active folks to get on right now. Noel, Mama Bowles.
Noel!
It's a feel-good fest.
And maker.
And Jorge just made the comment, come to Puerto Rico.
I'll be there. Oh my gosh, this is so awesome. I'm going to Puerto Rico. Noel's here. Yeah. This is awesome. So after, not even after Emory, right? So let me get into it a little bit. My freshman year, we can go there. Met a really crazy guy who was over this program that took freshmen away before they got to campus, and went on this like retreat, and it was all about diversity, right? What does that even mean? And it was by this office that was the multicultural office. So I'm like, again, where am I? What's happening? And even that retreat, it was called Crossroads. The crazy guy was you, Mark Cordone, and Noel. Noel was definitely a part of it. And the tribe is still strong, Crossroads all day. And some of the things that we unpacked were amazing. And the ways that we did it, and we did it through dialogue, we did it through team building, we did it through having really tough conversations, facing our privilege, unpacking biases, archetypes, all these things. And it really had a big impact on how I framed the rest of my Emory experience. And so, you know, I remember being a part of the Persian Club, for example. Like, who does that, little Black girl? Like, but I felt through because of Crossroads, and many of the friends that I'd met, that like there was no space that I wasn't welcome or, you know, couldn't at least try and dive into. So I also freshman year took a seminar class called Violence and Memory in Contemporary Africa. And when I walked in on the first day of class, I was actually kind of upset because there was this tall white lady with blonde hair at the front of my African studies class. And I was just totally confused. And what ended up happening was her name was, I'll never forget her. Her name was Dr. Pamela Scully. She totally changed my life. The first day I met her, she said, you know, first day of class, hi, my name's Dr. Pamela Scully, but I believe that if you need the word doctor in front of your name to gain respect, then you've already lost the battle. So just call me Pamela. And through that class, ended up learning about her presence, and she was South African, and just as South African as any native-born South African. And I learned about apartheid, and we unpacked the Rwandan genocide and just all these global crises. I ended up becoming an African studies minor and moving to South Africa in 2008 and studied, you know, everything from politics to the intersection of Islam, Judaism, Christianity, and again, just like had a great time deconstructing all these barriers and archetypes that society had tried to ingrain in my mind. And so I was going to law school, but when I got back from South Africa after teaching in the townships and doing all types of things, I decided I wanted to change students' lives in the classroom before the courtroom. And so I ended up applying to Teach for America my senior year of college, went on to teach fourth grade in Little Haiti in Miami, Florida. More transformative experiences. My kids taught me way more than I ever taught them. And they really framed my mindset on how like classrooms are really microcosms of society. So there's nowhere better to see what's right and what's wrong in a community than going to your local elementary school or middle school or high school. And our babies actually are like manifestations of everything right and wrong in our community. And so after in Miami, go ahead
for a second, because first of all, Jorge is talking about how he loves your simplicity. I love it as well, because you're going really deep, and you're also like
my scarf flew from a scarf just flew in my face. I'm sorry.
That's gonna go in the best of. Video.
Sorry.
But, when you were talking, number one is you've been using this word for like years now, so it's hilarious you're still using it. But also at the same time, like this idea that our students are microcosms for our society. It's almost like they are a reflection of everything that I guess the illusions of what we consider good and bad. Right. And so talk a little bit more about what about that.
Yeah. So let's take Miami, for example. My first time actually having students that I could mold, because that's what my students have always been, are like putty, and it's amazing to see what you can mold them into by the time you guys are together just 9 months. So I remember, for example, one of my students would sit close to the board and squint, right? And so she's sitting close to the board and she's squinting. And there are some teachers who may say, oh, how awful that, mom doesn't care and won't buy her glasses, or how awful that, we may have assumptions about the conditions that this child is either living in or experiencing. But what's actually happening is like mom was crying herself to sleep every night because she know baby girl went home with a headache from not being able to have those eyeglasses that she needed. And what she really needed was the village. And so, it was things like that, and seeing organizations that actually drive there was an organization in Miami at the time that like tested students who needed eyeglasses and then gave them to the school. And it was like literally phone calls from teachers or social workers or principals or school leaders or anybody to reach out to the community, because that's what I ultimately believe is my classroom taught me that there is no such thing as a resource gap. That is a fallacy.
Really?
Oh yeah, there is an access gap. Every resource that everybody needs exists. It's about access and who gets that stuff. And so I think that our access pipelines are out of whack. And in actuality, like the resources that are missing in people's lives and in systems and in classrooms, they are probably just misappropriated. They exist though.
Okay, interesting. So here in the story now, you're beginning to identify some of the misnomers or the misconceptions about these sort of gaps that exist, right? And folks talking about the resource gap, and now all of a sudden it's like, wait, it has nothing to do with resource. Maybe it's a really abundant society, but the access to that abundance or the mindset to even think that you can access that abundance is difficult. So where did we go after this, Jasmine?
I love the way you framed that because we often have a hard time believing what we can't see. And that's what faith is, right? And so in my classroom, seeing that, you know, these students who had immigrated from Haiti or Cuba or Honduras or anywhere could learn the language and do so quickly and then achieve math and reading levels at exemplary levels of proficiency. What they really did was deconstructed every stereotype that not only I had placed on them, but that my other teachers who said, hey, you got those kids, you know, like they proved us all wrong. And that was what really happened. I went in my classroom and said, hey guys, like, listen, you guys got some haters out there. And, you know, we create a common enemy. And so we've got haters and it's up to us to prove them wrong. So like, you know, will they say that you will be incarcerated at this age? Will they say that, you know, are those statistics about pregnancy or high school dropping out or any number of things? And so creating that like righteous frustration, it's like, no, I'm going to show you who I'll tell my story, not this data, not these numbers. And so that's what proof became. It was about seeing my students prove the world wrong. And what we really need to do is like not talk about it, just be proof. So after Miami, I got my master's at UM in education and social change and moved to New Orleans, which is one of my second homes. Had an amazing time there, teaching, instructional coaching, and became a board member at a small community charter school. And that was another space where I saw like what local control can do or look like in great ways and, you know, ways that we should not repeat. But here I am at home now on the south side of Atlanta, back to give to the village that grew me. So that's
Full
where
circle.
we are. Full circle.
Full circle. So we've got this journey that you've been on for 12 years, right? And even before that, right? There's the 12, you know, there was the 18 years before that. And then it was even you being brought into this world with certain notions of enculturation, right? Like there are things that have happened to the generations before us, you know, that we come into this world with, right? I love talking to you too.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Are you feeling it?
I so feel this.
Right. So talk to us where you're at now. I mean, you literally are at a new crossroads in your life right now with the idea of Proof Incorporated, you know, plans, resources, opportunities for organized freedom, as well as your public service work to continue working in the schools. Yeah. So where are we at right now?
Great question. So Proof, the acronym comes out of the space of those abundant resources we talked about. Like I often find that most folks want the same stuff. Parents want the best for their children. Neighbors want an awesome community. And so when it comes down to those concrete what's, a lot of that is the stuff we share. We all want abundant, joyful lives. And I operate in a space where like we all deserve it. What happens though, I think, is sometimes folks are missing that one plan or that one resource or that one opportunity to take them from where they are to where they want to be. And I, the school or an organization or a person like you or a coach or a teacher or a child even who knows everything we need. There's a plan, there's a resource, there's an opportunity. What we need to do is organize them. And then I think that's like what real freedom is. I actually think organizing is probably one of the scariest things to, systems, right? Like, oh my gosh, they're gathering and like doing things. I think that's like what people power is all about. Isn't that democracy? So that's where we are now is I see that from the classroom, there were times I've wanted to make decisions and felt like my decision making as a teacher was impacting my students, but there were people who were not in my classroom whose decisions were also impacting my students. And they weren't as close to the classroom as I was. So when I had to think about these like boardrooms or spaces where people talk about my scholars or the families that I know and see, the decision makers and the decisions were too far apart. So what I wanted to do is try to bridge that gap. And this is not the case everywhere. But in a lot of school boards, people are, bankers and attorneys and like all these great things, great professions. But I also think we need a space for educators and teachers and, students and parents and folks to be at the table who are actually the recipients of the product that we're delivering. And that's what my campaign is about like making sure teacher voice is highlighted and student voice and parent voice here in Clayton County.
Jasmine, from your experience, why do you think that certain voices are not at the table?
I think that that's literally what history is. History is just lies we all agree on. History is who had the pen and the paper and the literacy skills at the time. It doesn't have anything to do with which stories were actually more important. And if, for example, one of the things we do at Proof, right? I love context. Context is something I think a lot of us are missing across all lines of difference. Today, I think some of us turn on the news or receive information and we're like, how did this happen? How did we get here? And context helps us frame that. So what I try to do in our think tanks is we start with a primary source reading. Okay. And we read a primary source about a thing or an event from that time from an authentic voice. So for example, we can read about the Civil War all day, but at that exact same time, slaves were writing narratives. And what does the war sound like from both voices? And that doesn't to say that like one life was worthy of another, but one life had more access to certain resources without oppression. Systems built on race, economy, everything from like money to color of skin can be like have been historical barriers of what it takes to tell your story, which is why I think when you open your show and say, what's your story? Like that's power because it's our voices saying these things, not the textbooks or the history that we've been told.
Yeah. So I want to go back and I want to, as you looked at these primary documents and I mean, I don't know how far back you've traced, but like, how far back have you gone? Like, how does this?
Good question.
Okay. Sort of the marginalization of certain voices and the, sort of the deletion of stories almost.
Yeah. I will have to say, let's go back to Emory for a minute. So I talked about some of the values and characteristics and skills that I picked up, and what a like mind-blowing experience it was. But I'd be remiss if I didn't admit that that happened in my faith as well, and almost simultaneously. So I remember going and enrolling in a class at the theology school, and it was entitled Jesus and the Gospels. And I just knew I was going in to learn about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Those are the Gospels. That's what it's going to be. And in that class, when I learned that there were Gospels that were not just those four, and it really like forced me to unpack a lot of the things that I, assumed or thought it would be. So when we go back to your question about what it looks like to, I'm sorry, I'm like reading the things on the screen at the same time. It's like, what? Okay. So, what did you just ask me, Mark? I'm sorry.
I don't know what the hell I just asked you. I'm like sitting here thinking that there's more than 4 Gospels.
Yeah, I think it's just a pattern of deception that I was going through, a pattern of like, what don't I know that I don't know? And so when I became empowered to question everything and really see like, well, what do I think? What do I believe? To access and to like, so the and I think that's like the other empowering thing about travel and like meeting other cultures and different people, because then you start to your guests have had a pattern of this conversation about values.
Yeah.
And that's what this ultimately comes down to. Proof is a group, and we anchor ourselves in values. So when it came to our first think tank, for example, it was summer 2016. This is my second run for office, and I had just lost my first run for State House of Representatives. And I came in 3rd out of 5. And, it's the summertime. And in the same week, Philando Castile and Alton Sterling were murdered. And so here I am. I just come off the campaign trail. I am an organizer in my community, and my friends were grieving and lamenting, and just like, how could this be? Our brothers are being murdered. Like, nothing's happening. There were no consequences in either of those cases. And we're just thinking of like, what can we do? What can we do? And what it really came down to is I thought about my students and like being the thing we're looking for, being proof. So that's how the think tank started is, we sat around a table and we're like, how have we come here? So when it comes to how far back we go into, the 1700s, the 1600s. We love to read things, let's see. One of the things that we read that was really crazy was, it was right after the Civil War, maybe about 15, 20 years. And there was an article in a medical journal, and it was entitled, The Impact of Emancipation on the Negro Mind. And it was written by a doctor. And in it, it was talking about, there's a whole chapter on how the impact of emancipation has been negative. Looking at he was a professor, and a psychologist. So he says he works in the psych wards. And in the psych wards, he sees that the bed rate, the basically capacity rate was going up for the patients. And he was like, they're all Black. And it was better when we were clothing them and feeding them and caring for their families. And the impact of emancipation is pretty negative. And then the next chapter is entitled The Negro Woman, the Craziest of Her Species. And so we read that, but we're also reading about Reconstruction and about all of the progress that was made at that time. And when you think about this doctor was a doctor. And so his friends may have been, governors or leaders or landowners or anything. And if those are the people making the laws, and they say, look at this new medical journal I cited, this article from Dr. So-and-so. And if those things impact laws, imagine decades and generations of those behaviors. That's what unpacking context can kind of show us.
Absolutely. I'm just kind of fast forwarding to the 70s because there's there's a talk that I do with Asian Americans or whoever wants to listen for that matter, that shows a Time article that shows like Asian kids like this and stuff, and they've got books and stuff and all this great stuff, and it says those like wonderful Asian American, those Asian American whiz kids. And so this idea of, model minorities, but like, what does that actually mean to this construction now of an Asian American diaspora? Because there is no really, I'm Filipino over in Asia. I don't call myself Asian, And so there's there was political constructions. There was these constructions of what identity was. And then there was a question that I have to ask in terms of, well, what does that mean to me, and what can I do with that? Now, Faith Clark, I wanted to give you, where's my mouse here? Faith Clark, I read an article like that. So share that article, Faith. And I believe you're in a PhD program, Faith. So let us know what articles you've been reading. I do want to go back a little bit, because I'm going to go between proof and your sort of kind of one of these moments that I'm seeing. I don't know what to call it. But I wrote down sort of, you began to really question reality at one point. What the hell is real, and what is it that I assume is real? And as you were, number one, what got you going on that search? Or was it you fell into it? Like you're like, I'm gonna go to this class and learn about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Yeah, that is an amazing question. I don't recall having thought of that before. So on the spot, if I had to think about what made me search, it may have been as simple as like being a college student thinking about what you want to be when you grow up, right? So I went to Emory, and it's an amazing school. And I remember when I was going in, like, not only like being so proud about being at a top 20 institution and all these things, but I was going to be an attorney or a doctor. And part of the reason I chose Emory out of my other choices was because I felt like no matter what option I chose, I would be well prepared for both fields. So here I am, not pursuing medicine and not pursuing law, and thinking about education, thinking about my presence on a global impact and like what service feels like. I mean, I'll tell you, being in that class my freshman year, that was the first time I learned about the Rwandan genocide. Okay. And I cried for a very long time. There's a book and we had to read it. And it was assigned to us, and we wish to inform you that we will be killed with our families tomorrow. That is the name of the book. And it is a book of, Rwandan stories. And it was actually what Hotel Rwanda, the movie, was made after. And it was about the telegram that they sent to America to say, like, hey, we wish to inform you we will be killed with our families tomorrow. Do something. And I remember actually calling my mom, like from Emory, my parents, like, guys, this happened in, the 90s. That means we were all here. Like, what did you do? What did we do? And I remember thinking to myself that, like, when any children, my children, my neighbor's children, when any children ask me, like, what did you do when we had a rogue president, or when our, family members were being assaulted on the street, or when someone was homeless, or what did you do? I would just want to be able to have an answer. And my parents had answers, and, a lot of it had to do with anything from we don't know what we don't know to locus of control to, self-preservation, which has been another theme that's come up in a lot of your, with a lot of your guests. So we all have our reasons. But I think mine was just like wanting to be sure that I had an answer to help, assuage the fact that, like, there is something we can all do all the time, even if it's small.
So is what you're doing now really answering that question? Like, what is Jasmine doing?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, for sure. I think what's happening now is I'm finding and looking for the proof that I know exists.
Okay.
So So it's those same plans, resources, and opportunities that I know a lot of folks need. I'm them too. Like, this is a we thing. This is a us thing. So I'm very much in the pursuit of organizing my idea of freedom, right? Which is like controlling my narrative, making sure that, needs are met, and that like service is at the heart of what I'm doing.
Awesome. So let me ask you this. There's proof, the organization, but then there's also the idea of proof and sort of the righteous frustration that you used earlier, and you're like, almost like using a certain amount of energy, frustration to say, I'm going to use that to catapult me into my ideas of success, to catapult me into my ideas of flourishing and happiness, right? And so, when I hear about the word righteous frustration, it's almost like, yeah, I'm going to prove them wrong. So that idea of proof. Now, when you're talking about proof, are you talking about the idea of proving someone wrong, or using proof to empower your inner self?
I think that's a great question. And I want.
Did you just freeze on me, Jasmine? Okay, so I think Jasmine might be a little bit frozen. I'm gonna hold out for that for a couple seconds because, like, you're leaving us hanging here, Jasmine.
No, am I back?
Yes. Okay. So let's get situated. Don't get anything blown on your face. Oh, you just got.
It must have just went out. Let me go inside.
Okay. So I guess while we're getting situated, I do want to let you know. Have you heard of the band Genesis before?
I have heard of Genesis. Awesome.
So I want to show you Phil Collins. The Phil Collins just stopped by. Fan of the show. And
hi, Phil.
Phil, it looks like you're going to be working instant. Phil, you got to slow down with the albums, dude. Go into work right now. Good luck. Write a song for Jasmine. Write a jingle. But Phil Collins, it's great seeing you. So Jasmine, to bring it back again, is it proof to the external world, or is it proof to the internal self, is what I'm asking.
Good question. And I think that some folks interpret it differently. And I think that's beautiful. So right now, I am in a stage where I think I'm proving to myself first. And I think that that's part of why you start inside, because yes, I'm talking about, reclaiming your narrative and rewriting your narrative and shunning what society says that you are and finding out what you say that you are. And I think that that's all really important as you find your voice, because when we talk about finding your voice, the real thing is like, what are you saying? Yeah. Because I don't always find value in just like speaking just to be speaking or just speaking to be heard. Making sure that there's content. And so I think that as you find your voice, my personal process and what we were talking about singing is just like making sure that you're sure of what you're sure of.
Okay, so I want to go there then.
Let's do it.
Your voice. You're talking about singing. Yeah. What is your personal process when it comes to finding your voice?
So one of my processes for finding my voice, for me, it was honestly about like building confidence and making sure that I felt like what I was saying was meaningful. And so I came up with the acronym of SANGIN. I love acronyms in general as an educator, but I found that a lot of my answers came in silence. And so it was that the making space to be silent and seek, I think, is what that S comes about. Like, what do I think? Where did I get it? What do I know for sure? And I really loved, I think it might have been your guest, Wendy, who was talking about actually creating a list of values. My list of values is actually posted on my wall in my room. And that came from saying, like, what do I believe? And I was an African studies minor, but I was an English major. So in addition to like loving words, I also like etymology and where did this word come from? And this, we said faith, but does faith mean the same thing to you as it means to me? So in addition to my list of values, I've defined them according to like what I think that they are. So that's what seeking was about. Like, what do I think? What do I believe? Because if you just yield to the television or Instagram or Facebook, I think you may be vulnerable to information, beliefs, ideas, all types of things that are not true to you. And that's like the danger of bandwagon culture. So the ability to have your non-negotiables is what seeking is about. The next process is like assessing that. So staying curious in the seek is like really powerful, but you've got to assess all that you've sought. So it's like being a sailboat on open water, and you got to find your wind. Like, what moves you and what doesn't move you? So I think that's where you become aware that, like, hey, positivity, mindfulness, those are things that actually move me. They yield productivity in me in really cool ways. What doesn't move me? Being busy or erratic or like disorganized, right? Like those things aren't moving my boat. Those things aren't pushing my sails. And so that like assessing. And then I think the next part is like narrating it and putting all that you've interpreted into some type of words. So it might be journaling, it might be poetry, it might be prose, it might be a prayer, it might be a silent meditation, but like verbalizing that. And then the G in saying is like generating a product or an outcome. So like, what did all that do? Do you have a new value? Do you have a new idea, a new thing, a new stake in the ground? And for some people it's a book, right? Or it's a podcast, or it's a show, or it's they've generated like physical content. And for some of us, we're generating our own ideas, just the first time to say like, hey, this is what I think because I think it, not because I was born in this place at this time with this set of societal norms. And that's what singing's about. It's like, we all love a good singer, but I think it's really powerful when you're like, oh my goodness, that girl can sing. It's a different kind of voice. And if we focus on, telling our stories, I think this is a really cool process to make sure that like your voice is authentic.
Yeah, well, what I love about the sang process, and by the way, so since Phil Collins was here, we're gonna go studio, right? We'll sang for Phil Collins, right? Oh,
that's right.
So, it goes from this place of like really thinking about authenticity, like, and what I loved is your use of the word. What is non-negotiable? So with my clients, like we'll talk about values, and I'm like, let me remove this value from your life, and they'll go and say no. It's almost like removing like an arm from me. So that's where you know what your non-negotiables are. And so that's that seeking thing that you hear. And so like I heard this thing like sang, and like I originally thought about it as like being out, being at 11, kind of like what I do on my show, right? Being 11, right? But it does start with a place of silence. I think, Jasmine, I'm a pretty introverted person outside of this. I'm goofy, but I'm introverted, right?
Yeah.
And what I do love is that it starts moving to this place of generation. And when you're talking about generation, you're talking about actionables. You're talking about creation. And when you're talking about creation, you're talking about the destruction of old ways of thinking. You're talking about the destruction of things that we systematically thought were unchangeable.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Unchangeable, right?
That's exactly it. I call it pattern interruption.
Yep.
Here's the thing, okay? As I go through life, I think, we're all problem solvers, and that's my tagline for Proof. Proof is an ecosystem for intergenerational problem solvers. Now, we go through life solving problems, but my prayers have changed. I no longer say, hey, please make my problems go away, because in actuality, there will never be a life without problems. My prayer these days is for new problems. I actually love problems, because what that means is like God trusts me to solve them and figure them out. And if he's given them to me, they're my crosses to bear. And what an honor. So I'm grateful in that moment. The thing is, I don't want to be dealing with the same problems over and over, because what that shows is like a pattern or an inability in me to change that thing. And so I'm not saying, you know, immediacy, this whole time thing, like time is relative. But when we talk about like interrupting patterns that are destructive, that is what the whole point of values are about, right? Like, I think about Wendy's story and the cancers that she endured and what that could have been like to like, I couldn't imagine rushing that, right? So when we talk about like getting out of patterns that last too long, each person's story is different. And too long for one of us is not too long for another. But it is important to be mindful of like, hey, have I been like persistently mad about something or persistently feeling this way? Because in that case, I think that's just like where that silence and self-awareness and reflection is important.
Yeah, or I think one of the things that makes one of the power of pattern interruption is that when we allow something to be so immutable, so unchangeable in our lives that we just say, well, that's the way it fucking is, right? That's where sanging, I think, comes into a great place in everyone's life, because it goes and says, well, that may be a pile of steaming bullshit that you're thinking right now, you know, and like, let us work together to think of new ways around the things that you think are immutable and really start changing things. And what starts happening is that I think people think that I do this course in miracles, or that, you know, people like you are special, but we are. And also at the same time, but when you tap into that place where you know that you can affect change, not only does change happen, but change happens at a pace, at a rate that you didn't even think that you could do on a strategic plan. You go from like, I had one of my my guests talking about, it's like going through a literal portal, because time slows down and your activity, your mind is still calm, but your activity speeds up and you go from point A to point Z. And so
it's so true.
Yeah, and
I think I'm sorry, Mark, go ahead.
Stop fighting with me. No, I'm just gonna go ahead.
So I think, you know, we've talked about values, but I think a critical piece of what I'm doing and going through is also anchored in my vision. Okay. And my vision and my values have to go hand in hand. So one thing that just has it's come to me through elders, it's come to me through prayer and meditation, it's come to me through all types of ways. But a thing lately has been like, we cannot be anything mad, sad, anxious, frustrated about having a vision that other people can't see when God gave it to us.
Yep.
Right? So that time warp that you talked about, not only is the time warp happening, but like the people around you don't get it. Or the things you're saying, or the things that worry you, or wake you up in the morning, or put you to sleep at night, don't make sense to anybody else. Yep. And so that's the other reason that it became necessary for me to seek and go through that whole saying process and finding my voice, because everything around you might literally be telling you you're nuts or doing it wrong. Or, and so it's these archetypes, not only of like the stuff people see, like, you know, race, color, religion, blah, 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 but the stuff you can't see, like how to be successful and, you know, all these things. There's definitely, I know I'm one of millions of folks who feel like they actually did it right. We went to college, we got the degrees, we did everything that we were supposed to do. And actually, you mean to tell me that like there's more ways to be successful or make money or produce income or joy than the clock in out system? And so, yeah, like questioning everything is actually really fun.
Now.
Yeah.
No, but that's what they would say, right?
Yeah.
And so you're talking about something very powerful. And in psychology, it would be called the self-perception, or the perception theory, or the self-perception theory, right? Because in many ways you'll make a declaration, and the declaration, oftentimes businesses use this. The declaration is a big vision, or it's something called a BHAG, right? A big, hairy, audacious goal. Right? And the reason why it's huge, right? That's why it's big. It's hairy because, like, when you think about it, you're a little bit like, damn, did I just say that out loud? Did I just make a declaration? And here's the thing, it's audacious because of the fact that people will go and say, snowball's chance in hell that Jasmine's going to be able to do that.
That's right.
And in many ways, they're saying that because they can't see themselves doing it. It's not because they don't see Jasmine doing it. It's just they don't see themselves doing it, or they don't see society set up for you to succeed. Now, the people to bring on for support, right, are the ones who are like, damn, that's going to be hard. Jasmine's the right person to do it.
Amen. Yeah, absolutely. And now you're getting into the other piece of this, which is about the village. And I talk about villages a lot, but that came from actually spending time in villages. And in South Africa, you know, when I went in 2008, they were a democratic society for less than 15 years. Mandela was just freed in 94. I mean, 2008, I'm thinking about, I cast my ballot for the first Black president in Africa. And I'll never forget it. And when I'm thinking about like the buzz of organizing and change and deconstructing systems of oppression, like there was something transformative. I know I came back from South Africa crazy. I know I did. And in fact, like if I went and came back the same, I did it wrong. Oh. And it's just about like when you see one dad pay many kids tuitions for school after coming back from migrant work for 6 months, or when you see like, you know, moms all whose husbands are working on migrant farms rotate days to feed the whole village. I mean, that is when I fell in love with and learned and understood what Ubuntu means. And it's in, you know, it's also a word from South Africa that means I am because you are. And I read about it through Steve Biko and Nelson Mandela and Gandhi and all these people who worked in South Africa. But it really is this interconnectedness. And like, because I am me, I need you. I need my parents who say, you're, do you want to like try it this way a little? Or somebody who says, hey, actually like keep going. Cause like I'm inspired by that. Like it is the gumbo of it all that actually makes me me. And if it weren't for Crossroads, or if it weren't for, you know, Dr. Scully, or if it wasn't for literally every single metric on my journey, like the village is why I am who I am. So yeah, that support system you talked about is critical because you either need to have one or be yours first. And I think that was also what like that faith thing was about, seeking inward. Like there's going to be times I need light that no one can give me. And where do you get it then? So yeah, it's choosing joy.
Well, the first thing is I see you, Jasmine.
That's right. That's right.
And but the other thing is one of the greatest things that I've had the opportunity of doing was in terms of social justice work, like this Mark turned on 11 used to always be social justice work, right? It always used to be righteous frustration. And in many ways, I would use that to get all of us riled up about things like Crossroads, right? But, and then I insert things about like, okay, what is it that makes us happy? You know, what is it? Because we would always do it with a fuck you and a smile, right?
Yeah,
yeah. Just did it with a smile at the end. We loved being around each other in terms of movement work, and that's really what got me into positive psychology. And now that I'm going into this more, there is not only enculturation, but there are parts of our brain that are still wired for us to work within groups and tribes, just like in You know, in when we would run in packs back in the day, you know, running from dinosaurs. There would be someone whose purpose would to be the warner, to be the storyteller, and it was ingrained in the mind. And that's why nowadays we come in and we're like, for me, but why does it feel so empty? Because your village is missing.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes either the village is missing, or the folks who you think are your village may not necessarily be your village. I'm seeing your finger and you're sticking your tongue out at me now. What's going on?
So excuse me for making the faces. Sometimes my face says, it's just my face sometimes says things before my mouth does. And like, I'm working on that. So yes. Okay. So that gets into like support, right? So that was something that I've been thinking about, obviously, since like running for office and doing so a second time. And let's be honest, right? Like, I feel so much, I feel so much support. And part of why you and I are talking, like we've been talking about like the campaign and, you know, connecting in my village, I feel very much alive. And one of the things that I've had to do is recalibrate my definition of support. So when it comes back to defining our terms, there's this inventory I do sometimes in my head based on needs and like what the support that I'm being offered. And think about a child in a classroom, right? The young lady I was just saying, like, was squinting at the board. Like, if you came in and gave her a brand new backpack, that's really awesome because yes, like new backpacks rock, but that doesn't meet the need, the most critical need, which was the fact that she needed a pair of eyeglasses, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that if we put that on a societal level, oftentimes people are trying to give out things that are not really matched to the need. And so we have to recalibrate our definition of support, because that also doesn't mean that like, my vision of support, just because like I've got these needs and people are doing what they can, that doesn't mean they don't care. And isn't a prayer support still? Isn't a thought support? Isn't a good text that says, hey, I believe in you? Like, isn't that support? So yeah, we might need a donation for these yard signs, or we might need this, or we need that. But even when your needs are misaligned from the gifts that people are giving, just still finding ways to show gratitude. And it's also, I think about like, people don't know what they don't know. And we've got really robust villages, but then there's the rest of society, right? So like pride and what it looks like to ask for help, or what it looks like to need or want to serve. You know, so I think that exactly what you were saying was really important about like making sure that you are assessing the people in your life, and how they are operating, and knowing also that like they have their own crosses that they're bearing as well. So
absolutely. And I think in an age where we have such a large society, and we have such a large and multiple and multifaceted sense of belonging to multiple crews. Like, we're wired to be with one crew, right? But nowadays we have such a large network, right? So I've technically got 4,000 something in my friend crew right now. Mm-hmm. But there's some people that I haven't met, of course, right? But I think to bring that all together, it's sort of that idea of who really does see me in my crew, you know, because that's my crew. And then also at the same time, when they don't see you anymore, or they're like, or when they hit their own limiting beliefs to themselves, they start to not believe the reality of Jasmine being able to change things for the better, right? Mm-hmm. And that's when we also know it's time to reassess what tribe means again. And so it's not just a one-time thing, but it's a constant process of assessing, reassessing, people coming back, people going out, people coming back again. And nowadays it's okay. I wouldn't say nowadays, but I think in order for someone to be truly successful in any movement, you need a second person.
Right? Oh, yeah.
Right. And so that second person is the person who believes, and that's where the greater good comes from. Right. And that's where and that's why I've come full circle. And I'm like, okay, now that I can get my client to a state of feeling good and living in purpose, what I don't answer at the end is, what is your responsibility to community now? Wow. So sorry, that's just.
Don't you be sorry. That was really important. And I think we talked about this before. Like I said, listen, Mark, I'm so excited about the show. I am pumped to share, but I am clueless about a lot of things. And your people all seem so wise and and he's like, no, Jazz, that's how we need it, exactly where you are. But I do want to be honest with the guests about that, or any viewers is, that was medicine for me too. And as a learner and as a lifelong learner, I'm in it. I'm in a lot of the things that I hear, your show discuss, and everything from, hearing from elders who have decades of wisdom to think back on and be sure of values and things like this village concept. I think I'm very much in it. And what you said about vetting people, it almost sounds like a vetting system, to be honest.
Yeah, kind of.
I think, I'm learning that skill. And I think that that's important. Not only, it's important for boundaries, because as a public servant, I do have a responsibility to be accessible.
Absolutely.
But as a human, right? I deserve to love myself and block off time to do so, or those boundaries to make sure that I am a whole servant as I show up to do the work that I've been called to do. So I'm learning all that.
Absolutely. So I've got a couple things. I'm going to re-add this to the show notes. We've got Proof Inc. that we've talked about. We've got some elections coming up, and Jasmine is one of the selections that you can make in Clayton County, right?
That's right. That's right.
And it's the education, right?
That's right. School board. So I'm running for Clayton County School Board in District 1, and the election is May 22nd. So you can go to JasmineBowles.com and read more about me or the community. But I am doing this largely to restore and reclaim the narrative of Clayton County. And here on the south side of Atlanta, we have our fair share of challenges, as does every community. But, I've been a licensed realtor since I was 18. And so there are times that I'm driving around clients or talking to people, and they say, hey, can you move me right across the county line for any number of things that they've heard about why they should or should not be in Clayton County. And so we've got some narratives to restore. And so not only am I an educator and I've got a heart for the children and I know what this role takes and requires, but we also need a cheerleader and somebody who's proud of home, and teaches kids that I always hated being in classrooms where teachers would say, hey, do your homework. You got to make it out. You got to make it out of here. And I hate when we tell our kids that, because that's actually not true. The whole point is to grow up, make yourself whoever you want to be, but to come back home. And so as I do that, that's what this campaign is about, telling that story.
That is awesome. So May 22nd, I'm going to put the information up. There looks like there is the ability, if you also for folks to get engaged with Proof. So I'm going to put that information up as well. Do you want to know the awesome thing about knowing each other for 12 years?
Please tell me.
We still look fucking amazing after 12 years, don't we?
Don't we? Haven't aged.
Oh, you do. You look freaking amazing. You have not.
You look amazing.
Yeah, you look at my red hair. You like
I love it. I love it. I remember seeing your I saw you recently. I was like, I forgot what the post said, but it was went for more mature, so I dyed it back black, and like I just died laughing. But I love this mix.
Yeah, Jasmine, I just wanted to thank you for being a part of my journey. I wanted to thank you for inspiring me to follow a path of self-concordance and passion, and live basically unapologetically. And I've always done that in particular systems, but I feel like I'm doing it on a much larger scale now, and you've always been a part of that. And I hope that with awesome gratitude, like it's awesome that you've always been a part of my tribe, and hopefully you can always consider me a part of yours until I don't serve your purpose anymore.
Oh, get out of here. You can't get rid of me, even if you try, Mark. Like, I'm so grateful for you. I think I was, I was sharing with you earlier, and I mean it. We are very much intertwined. And so seeing you live your best life and follow your passion, and take risks and do things that people think are crazy, and you give them the big middle finger with a smile, like, it's empowering. And so I thank you, because that energy is contagious, and I feel it, I see it, I pick up on it. And for you, every guest you've had, and the whole tribe, thank you as well. And you can't get rid of me, so this is what it is.
Well, the Beyond Resilient crew is pretty amazing. They're pretty amazing folks. So you know how this ends.
Oh, yeah.
You know how this ends. Here it comes. The golden mic is descending. It's descending from the ceiling right now, and it's coming to a stop in front of you. And you've had the opportunity to live quite a life. And given that all of those things that you've taken in, all those experiences, now you're standing in front of a golden mic that translates into every language. And for 2 minutes, that golden mic is red hot, and everyone on the planet is listening when I hit the switch. So your golden mic, Jasmine, is on.
All right. I would say, my goal is to be the light I'm looking for. And I say that because we all have unmet needs, but we also live abundantly in ways that, like, I don't think our brains, notice first sometimes. So if there's lack, it may be a feeling. For others, it's food insecurity, right? But like, there is, despite all of our lack, light in something. And I've called this, period and some of the other trying times in my life, the Job stage from the Bible, right? And so here was Job, who, lived abundantly, had it all taken away, suffered, lamented, even inquired, asked, why me? All these things, and was blessed tenfold. And so what happens again is I go back to that part about, like, the prayer is not for problems to go away. They're for new problems. And as things happen, and I don't even mean like, we've all got our micro problems, from bills to this to that, but think about the global stuff going on. I mean, think of Syrians, and think of Haitians, and think of Cubans who still don't have running water, and think about Flint. And when I just think about, like, pain on micro and macro levels, finding the light that other people need, or being it, I think is the real responsibility. So as the golden mic, leaves, I would just say that I love you. I love every single person tuning in, and that's not BS. Like, I really mean it, because literally the interconnectedness of, like, every choice and thing that every single person makes impacts me. I was in the grocery store this morning. A lady walked by. She said hello, and she said, "Hey, baby, grandma just walked into the grocery store." And then I called my grandma because I saw how that grandma's light and day lit up. And it is literally those ripples. like that is a micro example of a macro thing that's really real. And it made my granny's whole morning. And that made my day. So if we think about each other like that, nothing's impossible. And instead of, saying it is, let's just all go be proof.
Jasmine Bowles, your golden mic has just been turned off, and you just gave a shout out to your granny across the world. We've never had that before.
I did give a shout out to my granny.
Jasmine, or as Noelle called you earlier, Jasmine Mama.
Yeah.
It was great to have you on the show. I miss you. I wish you success. And I can't wait to reconnect when we're back in Atlanta, and we'll do a Facebook Live together again in the same space. I promise not to walk by you again when I'm getting groceries.
No worries. No judgment.
And I think for everyone watching, like Jasmine, love Jasmine, forward this out. I am Mark Cordone. Again, I'm wishing you success, feeling good, living in purpose. And once you're feeling good and living in purpose, my question is this: what is your responsibility to others? We're signing out. I'll see you tomorrow. This is Golden Mike 27, baby. Bye. Yeah.